नहीं हो गया सर।
ठीक. Hello dear students and welcome back again to this discussion on the essay topics for UPSC Mains 2023. Just a while ago we took a quick overlook regarding what were the topics that were asked in today's examination, and now we are going to go ahead and take up some specific topics and see as to how you could go about tackling those topics at a length. The essay, guys, as you all know very well, is a deciding factor as far as your success in this exam is concerned. If prepared well and attempted well, then the essay can give you a very handsome leverage of 20 to 30 marks also over the competition, and that can really catapult your rank in the examination. But for that purpose, one needs to have certain idea about how to go about writing an essay for civil services examination. There are certain structural aspects that you must remember when you write an essay of UPSC civil services exam. So when we take up these topics today from today's paper, what we are going to do is we will also be parallelly discussing the kind of structure that you can use for writing essays. So without further ado, guys, let's get started. Let me just check if the live stream has begun. Okay, so we are on with it. Fine, let's get started, guys. So as we saw earlier in the first session, the nature or structure of the paper is quite similar to what it used to be like. Last year, there was a preponderance of more philosophical topics being asked. This year, it is more of a balance, and there is a certain nuance in which you approach philosophical kind of topics. So we are going to understand all of those aspects as we take up each one of these topics. So section A has 4 topics, out of which you are expected to write an essay on any one. By the way, how many of you have actually seen the paper today? Let me know in the comment box below. I hope you all have had that curiosity of knowing what are the topics that UPSC has asked in today's paper. If you've had that curiosity, then you deserve a pat on your back. And if you've not shown that curiosity, then that's also fine. Now we are going to take up the topics and discuss them threadbare. All right. So let us see what was the first topic asked in section A today. The topic is there right on your screen here, guys. Thinking is like a game. It does not begin unless there is an opposite team. So whenever we come across a topic, what do we do first? Guys, your entire process of essay writing goes through 3 stages. The first stage is selection of the topic. Second is ideation, and the third stage is actual articulation. All of these 3 are very crucial. Starting with selection. Now, when you are given a choice of 4 topics, you are supposed to select the topic on which you will be most comfortable to write an essay. While this may sound very easy, guys, but practically speaking, a lot of students end up making the mistake in choosing the wrong topic for themselves. They end up doing what I say is keyword jumping. Okay, so when they see a topic, they come across some keyword about which they feel they are familiar, and consequently they pick up that topic to write and end up realizing later midway that they have not even understood the full import of the topic. This can become quite suicidal in the exam hall, and therefore it is very crucial that you select the right topic out of the given 4 for you. Now, what may be appropriate or right for one candidate will of course not necessarily be the same for another candidate, and therefore it is a very subjective thing. You have to do that identification for yourself based on your strengths and weaknesses. Now, how to go about doing that? So as we start to discuss this topic, let me also in the background tell you about how you are going to go about selecting the topic in the first place for yourself. So let's start with this topic over here. Thinking is like a game. It does not begin unless there is an opposite team. So step number 1 when we write an essay is to identify the specific key words that are given in the topic. Now broadly, if you see, there is a certain specific type of structure that we come across in essay topics. More often than not, you will see that there will be two crucial keywords in the topic, and there will be some kind of association or relationship between the two. Here, whenever you see the topic in the exam, when you're choosing the topic, your first task is to identify what are those keywords and what exactly is the connection between them. Like for instance, if we take this particular topic, you have thinking and game as two important crucial keywords over here. For convenience sake, let's call them K1 and K2. And between this K1 and K2, we have a relationship that the topic is talking about. What is that relationship? It says it does not begin unless there is an opposition team. So on one side you have something called as thinking, on the other side you have game, and in between the connection says that K1 does not begin unless there is K2. So the second keyword is necessary for the first keyword to actually happen, is what the topic is telling us. Okay, so when we write an essay on this topic, we will be arguing about this central relationship between the two. Yes, we will explain what is thinking, we will explain what is game, but more than that, what we are going to also talk about is whether it can happen only in the presence of the other. So this is the essence of breaking down the topic in step number 1. Let me quickly repeat again. What do we do in step number 1? In step number 1, we disaggregate or break down the topic and identify what are the keywords given therein. And then we see what is the sort of relationship the two have with each other. That is when we get some sort of idea whether we are comfortable with the entire topic holistically or no. It should not so happen that we understand one of the keyword and then we directly take on that topic without actually understanding the relationship between the two. Okay, so as soon as the question paper comes in our hands and we see 4 topics in section A, this is the exercise that we are going to do. Step number 1, break down the topic, identify the keywords and the relationship in between them, and see if you are comfortable in dealing with all of these, that you understand and you can deliver on the keywords as well as the relationship between the two. Now, if for a topic all of this falls in place, then only we can take up that topic, guys. So I hope you understood this first step as to how you are going to go about in selecting the topic for yourself. Okay, so here we have thinking and game. The topic says that for this to happen, we have to have the opposite team. Okay, so for K1 to take place, thinking to take place, thinking is like a game. We need to have, it can happen only when there is a opposite team. So how will we go about dealing with this essay? Once you have broken down and noted the important keywords, then you are going to, in your rough work, exfoliate the keywords. Try to explain their meanings. The words that are used in essay topics are used in a metaphorical sense. As in, these words have a deeper hidden meaning within them. These words are not just to be taken in a literal sense. So it's crucial that we bring out the depth of their meaning. So in your rough work, you are going to identify or define what is meant by thinking, what is meant by game. And then you will talk about the relationship between the two. Whether opposite team is required for the former. Approach. Thinking is basically human nature. The great philosopher Descartes had said, "I think, therefore I am." Yes, good evening. I think, therefore I am. So human nature in essence revolves around this advanced feature that we have, mentally speaking, which is the attribute of thinking. Our prefrontal cortex in the brain gives us that capacity which other species do not have. Other species behave according to their instincts, whereas human beings, they think. And when we think, basically what we are doing, we are trying to engage in a debate with ourselves. We are seeing what are the different alternatives that exist before us. We are trying to identify on the basis of analytical reasoning what is the best course that I am supposed to follow. What should be my next step or measure? And guys, basically, don't you think that is very similar to what we do in a game? Say if you're playing a game of chess, then in that case, what are you constantly engaged in? You're constantly studying the moves of your opponent and trying to find out what should be your next move after that. How you can get your opponent trapped. Expert chess players, they are able to even think about 20 moves ahead. A good chess player is supposed to think at least 7 to 8 moves ahead, and a champion chess player can think 20 or beyond also. So that is what the essence of game is. Now, while this is true of a game like chess, it is true for any other type of game. Now, even when you're playing, say, cricket and you're batting, you are constantly trying to anticipate what the bowler is going to bowl. Once the ball leaves his hand, it is going to reach your bat in 1/6 of a second. So you have fraction of a time to respond. And for that, you have to indulge in some anticipation. What his line is going to be, what his length is going to be, what is the pace going to be like, and be ready for it. So in other sports also, we are constantly, thinking when it comes to games. So game is basically thinking in a specific context. I hope you're getting the, relationship between these two. Game essentially is based on competition. Game is what? Game is based on competition. See, just imagine that you are playing a sport, all by yourself. Will that be fun, guys? Or will it be more fun when you have a rival to deal with? When you have a competitor to actually outperform? When we have a competitor in a game, then we tend to stretch ourselves. We tend to put in our best. We try to use the maximum resources that we have within us. The topic is saying thinking is like that only, like the game. In the game, just as your opponent, your opposition team starts your process of playing it, similarly, thinking also requires to have, that opposition team. There has to be some, obstacle, some hindrance, some challenge, some problem before you for you to get into the thinking mode, for you to get the thinking cap on. That is what is the essence of the topic, guys. So this is the analogy that the topic is trying to build between thinking and game, and we have to then argue as to we agree with it or no. I hope you got this idea clearly. Now, let us go ahead and let us see how we can actually go about exfoliating the idea of this topic. Now, once we have defined and explained the given keywords of the topic, we explain what is meant by thinking. It is a process through which we human beings use our higher order skill to analyze a situation, to come to some decisions, to take some steps and measures for the purpose of advancing our goals. That is what is thinking all about. Okay. Now, this thinking is not necessarily just done at individual level. Thinking can be done at multiple levels. Thinking can be done in a team. Thinking can be done at an institutional level. Thinking or thought process can be done at a national level or at mankind at large also. So thinking as an act is not just limited to an individual. We have to understand that. I hope you are getting this. I'll just give you a quick example. The country of Japan in 1870 was at a very crucial crossroad. Next doors, China was being exploited by rival European powers. Rival European powers were exploiting the Chinese. The Japanese realized that they are next in line. Unless they transform their feudal medievalistic way of life, they are going to face slavery. And we see that Japan takes a conscious decision in 1870. It goes through a process called in history as Meiji Restoration and radically transforms itself into what? Into a modern industrial nation. So that thought process was happening not at individual level, but it was happening at a collective level, at national level. Okay, so this process should not be seen at individual levels alone. So having understood what is meant by thinking, having understood what is meant by game, and having understood what is the correlation between the two, we can come to a position of taking a stand on this topic, which we call as thesis statement. Okay, we are still doing the rough work, guys. The structure of the essay will emerge after the rough work is complete. What is the thesis statement that we can come to arrive at? So thinking, we can agree, begins with a competition. When there is some opposition, when there is some challenge, when there is some obstacle, and we are trying to overcome that, that is when thinking actually begins. We can agree largely with the wisdom of the topic. Now just imagine, guys, you are, you are in the stage of preparation for civil services exam, and every day you are slogging it out. But very often you feel that you have not been able to give your best. You have not been able to create the kind of outcome that you wanted to create. So what is happening? Your efforts are meeting a resistance from within you, from within your personality itself. It might be because of procrastination. It might be because of lack of planning. The reasons could be myriad. But that is like a challenge, an opposition or obstacle. This then gets you thinking as to how you can overcome that, how you can work your way around it and achieve your goal. So this is the process of thinking as it starts whenever there is a opposition, whenever there is a challenge to it. So please understand over here that the term opposition team over here again must not be seen in a literal sense alone. Don't take exact literal meaning of it. Opposition over here is not just a team. It could be, your own habits, your own thought patterns. It could be anything from individual level to a much higher level also. So anyways, we come to the conclusion regarding the thesis statement that yes, we will agree with the idea that the topic is giving, that it's a process that starts once we are faced with some challenge or some opposition. All right. Now, after this, we will try to explain the context of the topic before we go into more specific arguments. Thinking in simple terms is basically an activity for problem solving. Okay. Introspection to find out what is wrong, what alternate steps and measures must be taken. That is a constant process that we human beings have been doing right from time immemorial. Take the example of our great ancestors who walked out of Africa and spread across to different parts of the world. They also must have been thinking regarding the limitations that they were facing in those areas, the kind of challenges and problems that they were encountering in their habitat. And as a response to that, to overcome those challenges, they get into the thought process of why not venturing out and trying to find new places. That is what is the context of thinking ingrained in human psyche from time immemorial. This is a process of pondering or reflecting on something. What is the choice before me? Whether I stay here in the same position or I take alternate course of action. if I take alternate course of action, what will be the pros and cons of it? What will be the gains and losses associated with it? That is the process of reflection, pondering, or thinking, which we are so attuned to doing. In this process, we are basically analyzing and evaluating the options that we have before us. We try to understand what are the different possible ways in which we can overcome the situation, in which we can overcome the challenge. And then accordingly, we choose or decide a specific direction which will take us closer to our goal. Okay? This is a process that we are constantly indulging in. From the smallest of decisions at the individual level to the highest of decisions at national, international level, this is a constant and continuous process. Okay? So remember guys, when you exemplify your essay, you must try to bring in dimensions and examples from myriad different areas. Don't think that examples of individual level do not hold water. No. Simple examples at individual level also are able to connect a chord with the examiner. But then we give a plethora of different levels. What is happening at individual level to what may be happening at international level. A person trying to select a dress to wear is also a thinking process to a person or a country debating its future course of foreign policy. All of that is part of the same process as such, guys. Okay? So, having first understood the topic, defined and exfoliated the keywords, arrived at a stand or thesis statement about the topic, then we can go about providing examples from different areas which will strengthen our case. So to argue that yes, thinking is as a process, like games, requires some challenge, requires some opposition, we can then exemplify our content by providing examples from multiple areas. I hope you have been able to relate with this, guys. Yes, good evening all of you. Good evening, Trupti. Sure. Okay. So we can, start from historical background and give examples from ancient times across the world, ancient, medieval, modern times, and in different fields. We can provide examples which prove the thesis statement that we have, gone for, or what we have opined for. From prehistoric to contemporary times, we can see that different types of adversities, challenges, necessities have determined the choices that human beings have made in different realms. For example, take the case of India's decision to publicly declare that we are a nuclear power by conducting a test in 1998, the second Pokhran test. Now that was, a risky venture that we were undertaking. It required, that we consider many different types of pros and cons in that process. On the other side, we had a neighbor about whom we felt that Pakistan had, advanced in its nuclear program, and consequently, India had to take the first mover's advantage and secure itself from any future nuclear, you can say, blackmail that Pakistan may do. So that was a part of thought process against a specific challenge that we were facing. So that is an example from a relatively recent past. Another example can be regarding the future of no first use doctrine in our nuclear policy. Now, after doing the nuclear blast, we had declared unilaterally a no first use policy. But right now, we are in a debate as to whether this no first use policy or doctrine is something that suits India's interest well. And therefore, we have to indulge in that thought process based on the challenges that we are facing in our neighborhood. Now, recently, there was a book released by Ashley Trellis, which argues that there is nuclear asymmetry built in Indian subcontinent and around that. China and Pakistan have amassed nuclear weapons, and the quality and nature of the nuclear weapons is also changing. And consequently, India's old stand should now be done away with, and India should not remain committed to a no first use doctrine. So that's a changed context that we are facing, and therefore we have to get into this debate of whether we should give up on that traditional stance. So this is a constant process that goes on in the face of different challenges that we are facing. So right from ancient times, we can give examples. To protect from animal attacks or other dangers that human beings or we as a society faced, we had to take several decisions. And these decisions then helped us to evolve as a human society as such. To modern times, from ancient to modern times, in modern times we can give several examples. Indian subcontinent had united against the oppressive policies of the British during the freedom struggle or the freedom movement. The freedom struggle required that we take on the opposition of British domination over India. So that was again a part of that same idea of how opposition is required for that thinking process, much like what is to games. That is the same idea that we are here discussing, guys. Okay. Similarly, we can give examples at individual level also. At individual level, we see that there is constant competition that drives our thinking from simple decisions to major ones. The smallest of decisions that we take today is based on a specific set of conditions, specific set of challenges and problems. We don't take decisions in a vacuum. There has to be some limitation, some challenge, some problem that we are facing, and in response to that, we take a specific decision. At societal level, similarly, we can talk about the various different types of socio-religious reform movements that our country saw in the 19th century. There were different types of evil social practices like sati, not allowing women to remarry. There were many other practices also. Now, against these practices, we had to militate and fight. Again, that is part of that same thought process that we are discussing and what the topic is hinting at. Politically as well, we can give several examples. What we are seeing right now internationally, we are in an era of shifting, global compositions. We are seeing that countries who were earlier traditionally closer to each other are now drifting apart. Newer types of alliances are being forged. We are seeing cooperation by countries who were hitherto inimical to each other. And we are seeing warfare between countries who were earlier together. Take the case of Russia and Ukraine in the recent years. Politically also, constantly a person has to, think based on what are the opposition or challenges that he or she is facing. So across different dimensions, we can say that this wisdom that the topic gives is relevant and applicable. Competition drives business, innovation, and creativity in economy too. What is applicable at these multiple levels is also relevant in the field or realm of economy. Whenever a company is facing competition, that is, it is facing some kind of opposition, it also needs to get its act together. It has to think, it has to innovate, it has to develop new ideas. To give you a quick example over here, Microsoft, before Satya Nadella took over, before that, the fortunes of Microsoft were ebbing. Other tech giants like Google, Amazon, Apple were putting Microsoft way behind. Satya Nadella understood this changing circumstance. He understood the challenge, the opposition that he is facing, and consequently, he turned around Microsoft with new decisions or new thought process, new policies. What does Satya Nadella do? He reorients Microsoft from a company who was just providing operating systems to a company who was a leader, a market leader in artificial intelligence, in cloud computing, in machine learning. If you use Microsoft Office 365, you would know that artificial intelligence is now integrated in several of the apps that we have been using for several decades now. That is a thought process in context of the challenge or opposition that goes on in economy. What is applicable or relevant at economic level is also equally relevant in the framework of governance. Take the case of competitive federalism that is being promoted by Niti Aayog in India. Okay, in this vision or understanding, the different units of our federal polity, they have to compete amongst themselves to give the best results. Niti Aayog, through various different indices, has fostered a lot of competition amongst the states. The states are ranked on the basis of their performance related to climate change, related to eradication of illiteracy, related to health indices, related to financial prudence. So what is happening over here? Again, there is opposition, challenge, competition, and consequently thinking has to start after that. So this is a wide array of examples that we can give regarding how the wisdom of the topic is relevant. The same can be mentioned about environmental aspect also. Modern environmentalism, the green politics of today, how and where does it origin? This entire thought process that the current economic model of exploiting nature rampantly, that is not sustainable. It originates in the wake of industrial revolution. All the exploitation of nature that was being done, Mother Earth was being stripped bare of its resources. That led to the development of this new thought of environmentalism or environmental protection. That is the context, guys. So thinking on environmental lines or protection of environment lines, where does it originate? It originated in that challenge that industrial revolution had brought in its wake. I already gave you several examples from international relations also. Our recent experience of COVID also in this same frame. The experience in COVID taught us that we live an increasingly connected world. A disease originating in some distant part can travel very easily to some other part within a matter of days and weeks. So we have to be prepared. We have to be constantly vigilant. We have to be on the lookout regarding the challenges that are emerging in our vicinity. So this is a new thought that we have developed. WHO has tried to upgrade its infrastructure, its surveillance system, its warning protocols, so that these challenges could be overcome effectively. So we can see there are examples from different areas. So in this manner, guys, using dimensions from multiple areas, we can build up an argument regarding how the wisdom of the topic, that is, thinking is like a game. It starts when there is opposition. It can be justified. Overall, the essay is all about building an argument around a central thesis. Essay in civil services examination, guys, is an opinion piece. So please understand that. You have to justify your opinion based on logical and coherent arguments. And for logical and coherent arguments, you have to bring in content from multiple different perspectives and dimensions. All right? I hope you are getting what we are trying to discuss here. Now, having said this, we also have to factor in the antithesis of what we have said. There is always some kind of nuance or counter side to the opinion that we might take in the essay. Thinking does not always require competition to begin with. While it might be the case most of the times, but there will be some instances where there might not be any imminent challenge or imminent problem, yet it might get people to think. Thinking can happen by chance also. You may, for example, Newton sitting under the tree, okay, an apple falls on his head, and then from that starts a thought which ultimately leads to his development of the idea of gravity. So it was something that started by chance. In some cases, people might do thinking in a proactive manner. Without there being a challenge, somebody might think to overcome a challenge in the future. Take the case of Odisha. Odisha, over the recent years, developed a very advanced form of mechanism to deal with cyclones. It developed shelters, it developed warning systems, it improved its technological base, it brought about reforms in the drills associated with natural disasters, and all of that had a big impact when cyclones like Amphan hit the eastern coast over the recent times. So that had started as a proactive measure as such. So in this manner, guys, we can also try to bring about a nuance and qualify the thesis statement or the wisdom of the topic, that yes, while this might be the case, there can also be some alternate realities which we must remember. Okay, so I hope you got this. Last point, thinking will not necessarily always be creative or positive kind of activity. At times people can use it for destructive purposes also, as we see in the case of several dictators in the world. Hitler is the foremost example of it, but the Idi Amins of the day, the Khmer Rouge regime of Cambodia, Pol Pot, and such other dictators can be cited as examples. Okay, so in this manner, guys, we try to build up a 20-paragraph essay where in the introduction with a story, we try to capture the essence of the given topic. Then after that, in the second paragraph, we try to connect that story with the keywords given in the topic. Then we take the thesis statement as we have evolved in our rough work and mention it at the start of the essay so that the examiner can relate and understand as to the stand that we are taking. We also try to define and exfoliate the keywords so that the meaning that we understand is very clear to the examiner. So in 2 to 3 paragraphs, we can explain the meanings of the given keywords so that the examiner is able to understand the position that we are taking. Subsequent to that, we argue our case as to why the wisdom of the topic is relevant and applicable. While arguing our case, we try to bring perspectives, dimensions, and examples from multiple areas. Okay. Then towards the end, we can give a counter thesis as regards how the topic must be seen in a nuanced manner. While the wisdom of the topic is relevant, but at the same time, there is an alternate reality also which we cannot lose sight of. After this, we can bring about some challenges and solutions. So how can we make thinking more effective? How can we, use this virtue that human beings have, not just in cases of challenges or oppositions, but also more proactively so that it benefits us and whole mankind at large. In this manner, we can provide some challenges and solutions regarding the topic, and then we conclude it by summarizing what we have presented. Guys, try to give conclusion in at least, in say 2 paragraphs. What generally I see is a lot of candidates write just 1 paragraph of conclusion. Writing just 1 paragraph ends the essay in a very artificial manner. It does not give a sense of finality to the essay. And therefore, I suggest that we write a conclusion of 2 paragraphs. In the penultimate paragraph, we summarize what we have said in the essay. So in other words, what we said in the thesis statement, we try to put it across once again to convince the reader about its validity. And in the last paragraph, then we can give a forward or future looking comment regarding the wisdom of the topic, how it is relevant to overall mankind, how it is in conformity to our values, civilizational ethos, so on and so forth. So the conclusion in the end has to be a very effective one so that a lasting impression is left on the examiner. So this is how we could have, tackled this first essay. Now let us take the second essay, guys. The second essay says, let us see the topic and then we'll try to do the same exercise with this topic as well. Visionary decision making happens at the intersection of intuition and logic. Visionary decision making happens at the intersection of intuition and logic. Visionary decision making. So what are the keywords over here? On one hand, we have visionary decision making, and on the other hand, we have intuition and logic. The topic gives us the relationship that A or K1, if we can call it, the first keyword, that is visionary decision making, it always takes place when there is intersection or symphony between these two aspects, intuition and logic. So both have to be present to make a particular decision a visionary one. Let us understand the keywords clearly first. What is meant by visionary decision making? What is decision making in the first place? Okay. Decision making is basically all about considering different alternatives or courses of action that we have and selecting one out of them based on the pros and cons attached to each one. That is decision making. What is visionary decision making then? Visionary decision making is that sort of decision making which is going to have an impact for a very long period to come. That is visionary decision making. Something that is going to lead to fulfillment, development, betterment, growth, prosperity for the subject. Maybe the individual, maybe a society, maybe a nation or mankind. When all of these things are going to happen over a long period of time, then we say that such a decision is a visionary one. Take the example of your own mobile phones. India today boasts of the cheapest rate of data in the whole world. India has the lowest rate of data, guys. And this very low rate of data has revolutionized our economy. You are watching my lecture in the confines and comforts of your home on the internet because data and all of these things have become so readily accessible and cheap. But all of this would not have been possible had we not started or initiated our space program. It is our communication satellites that have made these things possible. So that was a visionary decision that was taken decades ago, the benefits of which we are reaping today. That is what is meant by visionary decision making. On the other hand is the other keyword, that is intuition and logic. So we'll have to understand these two aspects also. What is meant by intuition and what is meant by logic. Now, intuition is that inner sense of gut feeling that we have. We feel that something is right, that we must actually do this. There is no specific mathematical or statistical evidence to suggest so, but we have a strong inkling that this is the right course of action. We have that, if I may use the term, andar ki awaaz, okay, which says that this is the right course to follow. And that was the same thing that we were doing when we started our space program, when the country was, going through so many different types of crises. It was a ship-to-mouth existence in 1960s, and yet we were advancing on our nuclear program also. Got this idea, guys? So that is basically visionary decision making. And intuition is when you take calls or decisions based on your inner gut feeling. This inner gut feeling comes out of a lot of experience, having done things yourself, firsthand. When you do that repetitively over and over again, you realize if something is right or wrong about a decision. And based on that experience, you take a call. Those sort of decisions are called as intuitive decisions. Okay, that is your intuition. Commonly, in common parlance, we call it sixth sense also. So that is intuition or intuitive decision making. The other side of it is logic. Okay, logos is the root word from Greek language from which the word logic is derived. Now the word logic basically talks about hard empirical evidence which supports a particular decision. If, say, for example, India was taking the decision of opening up its economy, it was based on hard facts. We had reached a status where we could not foot for our import bill for more than 15 days. Our dollar, our forex reserves had dwindled completely. Now, in that situation, when international organizations were asking us to reform our economy, the decision to do that was not intuitive. It was based on what? It was based on hard facts as such. Okay. The topic is saying that our decisions have to be based on intersection of these two aspects. That is, intuition as well as logic have to play an important role in it. We can't rely on just one aspect of it. We can't say that our decisions will be completely based on intuition or completely based on logic. They have to combine both these elements. Now, what are the different types of intuitive decisions that we can cite as examples? There can be many examples that we can cite when it comes to intuitive decisions. In our personal lives also, when we often take some important calls, it might be, sometimes deciding something as important as a career, or something as simple as whether you should, extend friendship or you should be at good terms with somebody or no. Very often we base our decisions on what? We base our decisions on intuitions. Okay, these intuitions often guide us regarding what can be good or bad for us. But very often because of lack of experience of life, because of lack of experience of the field concerned, our intuitive decisions can backfire, they can go wrong. And therefore, the other side also becomes crucial. In logical decision making, we don't just go by, our gut feeling. We look at the relevant information that is available for us before deciding something. What are the hard facts that are placed before us? If I am deciding to plan a career in a certain field, what are the kind of opportunities that it has? Do I have the requisite skill, knowledge for it? Do I have the suitable aptitude for it? So this is a decision that is based on logic. Okay? But sometimes just taking pure cold logical decisions will also not help. Logical decisions can come in handy for analyzing, for problem solving, but big, bold achievement, something visionary, something great, it cannot be done only on the basis of cold facts and logic. Just imagine if Sachin Tendulkar would have tried to decide his career based on simply logic. What is the chance or probability that he will make it to the Indian team? Or if Lata Mangeshkar would have wondered if she will ever become a good singer based on hardcore facts. So while logic has its own role to play, so does intuition, and vice versa also. Both of them have their own relative importance, and it is at their intersection when both of these things actually come together, that is when visionary decisions are taken. That is what the topic is saying. I hope you understood the meaning of the topic, guys. So now let us see how we can approach this topic in detail. We can have an approach that yes, both intuition and logic are required for visionary decisions. This can be our thesis statement when it comes to this topic. We can cite examples from many different fields, as we will see shortly, regarding how this particular thesis statement is valid. Then we can tell how we can develop intuition and logic as well as balance both of them. It might so happen that we may tend to stray towards just one side. A person can become too cold based on, just facts, figures, data, etc. And at the same time, a person would become too reckless if he leans towards only intuition. So not only are we supposed to develop both the sides of our decision-making skills, but at the same time, try to learn to balance both. In this manner, we can try to deal with this topic. Okay, let us see what can be some of the examples which demonstrate this, this intersection of both, that is logic and intuition. Watson and Crick's discovery of DNA structure. You've read that story. That invention, or that discovery rather, was purely based on both the ideas. It wasn't as if it was just based on cold facts, figures, and just scientific exploration. It also required the intuitive knowledge of these scientists, which helped them to discover the double helical structure of the DNA strand. Similarly, Alexander Fleming's discovery of penicillin can also be cited as an example. Wegener's intuition, that inner feeling that yes, continents are drifting, that intuition and his pursuit of it led to his further probe into this fact of nature, and out of that was born the very important field of plate tectonics. So there can be several examples through which we can argue that it is at the intersection of these two that we see major decisions are made. Similarly, Charles Darwin's intuition about natural selection and evolution of species. Charles Darwin was a naturalist who traveled greatly into the wild, and looking at the first-hand, you can say, experience that he was getting into the wildlife, he had an inkling that there is some kind of a system that works wherein only the fittest are able to survive. The species which is the most dominant will be ranked higher in the ecological pyramid, and the most fittest species is going to survive. Now that theory of Charles Darwin, or Darwinism as we call it, that also is based on that intersection of the two things, logic as well as intuition. Franklin D. Roosevelt, giving an example from history. Franklin D. Roosevelt implemented the New Deal in the wake of the Great Depression of 1929. The New Deal. Now what was the New Deal all about? The New Deal was all about bringing USA out of the financial, or you can say economic mess that it was in during Great Depression. Franklin Roosevelt understood both through logic and intuition that the only way to revive US economy is to reinforce the confidence of the people in the economy. And for that purpose, the state had to take several initiatives and pump in money in the economy so that that cycle of churning of money will start again. So in this New Deal, Franklin Roosevelt started several programs like the Tennessee Valley Authority, and he implemented many infrastructure projects through which jobs were generated, money went into the hands of people, and through that employment is generated, confidence is back, and America is out of this rut of the economic depression by the time it is 1933. Similarly, if we talk about different types of innovations and creativity that we have seen in recent times, here also several decisions were based on intersection of these two. Take the case of Steve Jobs' visionary choice to create iPhone, that wonderful device that either people have it or aspire for it. Okay, slight exaggeration, I know, but then there's no taking away from the fact that iPhone is a very craved after product. This decision was because of his creative vision and intuition about what consumers needed. Before iPhone came in, nobody would have imagined that a product with these kind of services and with the kind of exclusivity that it had, with the kind of high ticket price that it was sold at, will become so immensely popular and hit amongst people. But Steve Jobs all along believed in the kind of product that he was bringing out. And ever since the product has come, its popularity has only further, soared higher. So what was that a result of? That was again a result of that intersection of both. There is some magic at that intersection, guys. Each side, intuition takes care of the limitations of cold logic, and logic takes care of the audacity of intuition as such. So both these aspects balance each other's negatives, and that is what creates the magic of visionary decisions. That same can be seen now in the case of Elon Musk's example. Elon Musk, I mean, he is a person who just continues to amaze the world. From having established his first business venture at a very young age and become insanely successful, this man went on to establish companies like Tesla and SpaceX. He is now dreaming about colonizing other planets. Yes, very audacious dreams, but that is what visionary decision making is all about. His company is burning dollars like anything for the purpose of that great vision that it has. And look at the choice of his name for the car company that he started, Tesla. That also resonates with the idea of, vision. Tesla was a scientist who was not just about, small incremental changes. He was a man who was dedicated to a larger vision. Elon Musk, in many ways, exemplifies that same thing today, that intersection of logic and intuition. Long-term perspective. Okay. Antitheses. Why intuition and logic alone are sometimes not sufficient, individually speaking. When you rely on only one side of it, say you are reliant only on intuition or you're reliant only on logic, then in that case, there can be a backfire of one of them. Because you have not taken care of the other, the decision that you may take will turn out to be wrong, and that will have grave consequences for you. So in the antitheses, when we talk about the antitheses of this essay, we have to try to bring in a nuance, try to balance the perspective of this particular essay. So I hope guys you are getting how we are going to approach this essay. Human and societal factors. It requires knowledge of societal dynamics, human behavior, and values. Why intuition and logic alone are not sufficient? Why is it that alone individually they cannot serve the purpose? It's because you require knowledge of societal dynamics, human behavior, and values. In the absence of the knowledge of these dynamics, your decisions will not turn out to be favorable to you. It may immensely backfire and create more challenges. Martin Luther King Jr.'s visionary choice to spearhead American civil rights movement was based on both the ideas. It was not based on just one idea. It had an element of intuition, and at the same time, it had an element of logic. The argument that he was putting forth, that Black African Americans should have a position of equality and respect in the American society, was based on hardcore facts and logic. It was supported from the amendments that have been made to the US Constitution, the values on which the state was based, and at the same time it had a strong intuitionary aspect also. As human beings, everybody should be deserving of the same kind of status in the society. So that is the aspect over here. In the absence of one or the other, the decisions are not going to result in success. Transcending conventions. Visionary choices go against accepted beliefs and norms. Visionary choices do not limit themselves to existing situations or existing context only. They try to go beyond what is established for today. Take the example of Nelson Mandela's leadership in post-apartheid South Africa. What do we see in post-apartheid South Africa? We see, guys, that after the release of Nelson Mandela, when he comes to power, Nelson Mandela could have, unleashed an exploitative regime against the former white supremacist kind of people in that country. But instead of that, Nelson Mandela did exactly the opposite. He reconciled the differences. He brought about what is called as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He tried to solve the differences between the two or other races in South Africa so that a rainbow nation, as he called, remember the term? Rainbow nation. The rainbow nation of South Africa would flourish. Okay. Now this is visionary decision making. What is it based on? It is based on both the aspects. Which aspects? It has one, intuition, and also cold logic. What is the intuition? As an experienced statesman, he understood that any violence at this stage could imperil the well-being of South Africa forever. It would push it back into cycles of violence and counter-violence. That was intuitiveness. And second, logic. Logic, or hard facts or numbers. The black people who had been oppressed for several decades, or rather centuries, they were seething with anger. And once unleashed, it would lead to riots. It would lead to economic dislocation. It would lead to unemployment, poverty, and all of that was already existing in South Africa to a great scale. Therefore, he combines his decision based on both the aspect, intuition and logic. And that is why South Africa did not go down that road. It became a model for countries who had ethnic conflict. Okay. Now, this is how we try to, develop our arguments, guys. Now, let us see what are the challenges or limitations of actually trying to implement this in reality. While it is very well to say that our decisions have to be based at the intersection of the two, but then actually implementing it is a very different task as such. What is the problem in implementing it? What are the challenges? Challenge is over-reliance on either of the two sides. By nature, we have this tendency to actually base our decisions on either of these two sides. People, institutions, organizations, they generally tend to lean towards one side. Those who are basing their decision only on logic, they go on to miss many great opportunities. Take the case of the corporate case study of Nokia. Nokia, during, once upon a time, mobile as such was synonymous with Nokia. It had 80% of market share in India. That was the kind of domination it had in India. Globally also, it was one of the most dominant players. But then it did not, unlike other companies, rapidly transform itself when the opportunity was of smartphones was lurking on the horizon. And consequently, it missed the bus, it missed the opportunity. And we see that nobody today even talks about this company, Nokia. Why is that so? Because over-reliance on only logic and not basing decisions on intuitiveness also simultaneously. Second, the second challenge of actually executing it is the other side of the story or the other side of the coin. Over-reliance on intuition alone. Okay? What happens is sometimes people try to base their decisions on intuition alone and completely relegate or neglect the hard facts or context that is relevant at that point of time. And because of this intuitive kind of decision making, which is devoid from hard facts, there is a big, loss to the individual or to the company. The example of Elizabeth Holmes and her attempt to revolutionize blood testing, it is clearly a telling example of this. She ignored all the red flags and the critical feedback that was coming through the testing process, and that ultimately gave a very big dent to her company's credibility. So this is an example of the other side. Importance of self-awareness in decision making. While you are taking important or key decisions, at that point of time, it is crucial that you have awareness about your own self. Whether you are connected with these two sides of your thought process, of your personality, is going to be very decisive about the outcomes. When a person does not have that self-awareness, he tends to lose that balance. Developing that self-awareness is very crucial, and that is definitely not easy, guys. It is the key to achieving that balance, but then it requires a lot of effort and conscious practice to reach that level of self-awareness. So these are the, you can say, challenges regarding how to actually implement both of them. Now, how to develop intuition and logic. We have understood what are the challenges. So we also need to talk about what could be some of the potential solutions for it. To cultivate intuition, to develop that inner gut feeling, we have to have the practice of self-reflection a lot. Constantly looking inwards, talking to your own self, trying to hear the inner voice that might be coming or emanating from within. That is self-reflection. Trying to understand your own thoughts. That is self-reflection. A lot of times we have the knowledge of the whole world, but not our own self. Kiski justaju avara rakhti hai tujhe. A famous poet said, Kiski justaju avara rakhti hai tujhe, raah tu, raharu tu, rehbar bhi tu, manzil bhi tu. So the poet is hinting that all that you are seeking outside is actually within you. All that we need to do is go inwards, self-reflect. When we self-reflect, we are able to connect with our hidden wisdom within and try to base our decisions based on, intuition. We also have to develop that trust on our gut feeling. Mahendra Singh Dhoni had a secured job in Indian Railways. That job, although it stands no comparison to what he achieved later, but then for any average middle class family, it was a career worth aspiring for. But Mahendra Singh Dhoni had that strong gut feeling from within that he was made for the sport of cricket and he will make a big name for himself. He trusted and backed that gut feeling. You have to develop that confidence in your own gut. Once you are able to get that feeling from within, then you must be able to back yourself. Okay, that will come through implementing it over and over again. Embracing the creativity within. Whatever hidden potentials you have, you must be able to explore that. You must be able to give expression to it. And that is how your intuitiveness will also develop. Developing mindfulness and meditation. The talk that our inner self is constantly trying to engage with, that can happen only when our mind is stable, it is clear. And that clarity requires meditation, having mindfulness as a practice. But in this rat race wala world, it is very difficult or challenging for people to actually develop that higher state of mindfulness. So this we need to practice to develop our gut feelings. Development of logical thinking, analytical exercises, data analysis, scenario planning, all of these things are different types of methods where we use the information at hand to analyze and find out what could be the best course of option, the best option for us. Based on hardcore data and facts, we can try to find out how we can arrive at the right decision for ourselves. So constantly trying to develop and use these sort of tools is required. And then balancing the two. So we try to develop one side, then the other, and at the same time, we try to balance these two. How can we balance this? That can be done by extensively collaborating with others. When you try to do your decision making by yourself without any kind of communication with others, one may not be able to understand whether his decisions are balanced or no. And therefore, it is very crucial that a collaboration is done with others. Feedback loops. Feedbacks, as in whatever decisions have been taken, what is their impact? What is their outcome? How is it actually shaping other people's lives? How is it affecting your stakeholders? You need to have a constant feedback loop about that so that your decisions could be changed, amended based on the requirement. And constant learning. Constant learning. It's a lifelong journey, guys, to develop a balance between these two. You can't do it overnight. So constantly, you have to keep on fine-tuning your decision-making process based on both these aspects. That is when you will be able to develop that fine balance, that intersection of these two different types of, inputs for decision-making. In conclusion, rounding up, what can we say? Conclusions, guys, as I've told you, try to write conclusions in 2 paragraphs. In 1 paragraph, first summarize your thesis statement and arguments. So that in a way tells the examiner once again what you have put forth in the essay. And then in the last paragraph, you give a futuristic sort of a vision about the wisdom of the topic. You can connect the wisdom of the topic to our civilizational values, to ethos, to the challenges that we as a nation or humanity are facing. You can also alternatively bring back the introductory story that you might have used. And towards the end, as a final flourish, in the last couple of sentences, you can connect it back to the original story. So in these many different types, we can write our conclusion. A lot of students make the mistake of not planning their conclusion effectively, and that then misses out an opportunity of fetching good marks. So in this rough work, plan out the conclusion content as well. Okay, so that was the second topic that was asked for today. After this is the third topic. Not all who wander are lost. Not all who wander are lost. So here again, like we have seen the steps earlier, how do we tackle this topic? We try to identify what are the main keywords given in the topic first. So here you can see, not all who wander are lost has two main pillars or keywords. One is wanderer and the other is lost. So that can be our two main pillars. And in between, we have a relationship that not all of these, not all of X are Y. So the topic is giving us the wisdom that not everybody who has wandered, who has gone astray, who is trying to grope in the darkness, who is trying to reach his destination but has not yet reached, not every such person has actually lost. Yes, some will be lost. Some would have, gone on the wrong path, but not everybody has lost. Not everybody has got lost. That is the idea of the topic. So, after having understood this, these are the keywords, and this is the relationship between the two. This is what we need to argue about. What kind of approach we can keep for this essay? We can start our essay with a small story or anecdote. Stories, anecdotes are a very good way of starting your essay with. Stories immediately connect because they have an element of emotion. And we human beings immediately resonate with emotions. So here we can say, we can use the anecdote of, say, Gautam Buddha. Gautam Buddha, at the prime of his youth, a prince, he leaves behind all the luxuries that world could offer at that point of time. Leaves behind his family, leaves behind the opportunity of becoming a ruler, and he goes about trying to find out the ultimate reality or truth of life. So what was he doing? He was basically wandering. And wandering for how long? For almost 12 years. For a very long time he was wandering. And ultimately he reached that bliss of nirvana. But can we say that because he was wandering, Gautam Buddha was actually lost? No. So that is what the topic is basically hinting at, that all those who wander are actually not lost. In this topic, we are going to provide arguments on essence of wandering. Now, what is this wandering about? The wandering can be, mental, intellectual wandering. People can be, physically in that same place, but mentally, emotionally, intellectually, they might be wandering to find some ultimate, anchor or root that they are searching for. So mentally you can be a wanderer, and of course physically also you can be a wanderer. But whatever the case might be, if you are in that state of flux, if you are trying to find that ultimate truth or reality and have not yet found it, the topic says it does not necessarily mean that you have lost. We can definitely agree with the wisdom of the topic, and therefore we will argue as to how that is not the case. Arguments on essence of wandering. We will provide arguments about it by supporting examples and also giving a counter view as we have seen in the previous topics also. Okay, let us get into the story, or let us get into the actual writing of the essay. What all different examples can we use? We can use the example of Prince Siddharth, who later will become Gautam Buddha. I already told you about that story. Alternatively, we can also talk about Columbus. Okay, now Columbus and many of these other European explorers, they set out sails into the Atlantic Ocean for the sake of finding out an alternate safe sea route to India. Now, they believed that by going on a journey of circumnavigation around the globe, they will at some point reach India. But then, in that process, they could not reach India, but they discovered two massive continents on the other side of the Atlantic. Amerigo Vespucci later went to Europe and wrote the book, The New World. And on the basis of that, these two continents were later until date referred to as the New World. So in that sense, these people were wanderers. They set out for some destination, but were not able to reach it. So they are wanderers. But were they lost as such? No. Why? Because they were able to find out something that was, very, very valuable, something that was an alternate to what they were seeking. So in that sense, these stories can be used to make our opening of the essay very powerful. Guys, just as in a movie, the first 5 minutes of a movie are very crucial. That is where the director, catches hold of the attention of the viewer. So similarly, the first 2 paragraphs of an essay are also extremely crucial. In the first 2 paragraphs of the essay, you have to impress the examiner, and a good way of doing that is using stories. Now, a lot of students find it difficult to write stories or anecdotes effectively. For that reason, I have a simple formula for it. What I call as CAR model. Okay. What is meant by this CAR model? In this CAR model, it's an acronym which stands for conditions, conflict, action, and result. Conditions, conflict, action, and result. That is CAR model. So when we are writing a story, in the first sentence, we can mention first, evocatively, what are the conditions at that point of time. In one sentence, very briefly, we are going to talk about the conditions when Columbus and others are going to go out in that seek or in that journey. We can talk about the context of Europe, the rise of Ottoman Turks, the difficulty of trade with the East. That will be conditions. Okay. Then after that comes conflict. Now, the changed circumstances in Europe necessitated that the Portuguese and the Spaniards, they have some alternate access to Asia. So there is a conflict. On one side, you have the Portuguese and Spaniards, and on the other sides, you have the monopoly of the Turks, the Arabs, and the Italians. So there is a conflict. So for that conflict, there is going to be some action. What is that action? That action is Prince Henry the Navigator and later many others will promote these explorations. The like of Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, and many others will set sail. That will be the action. And then last sentence is about the result or outcome. The result or outcome is about what immediately happened because of this. The new world was discovered, 2 new continents were discovered, and there will be born the future great country of USA in subsequent centuries. So this is the CAR model, guys. Why did it happen? Because the wanderers were actually not lost. I hope you got the connection over here. What can be the thesis statement then? Now we have understood the topic. We have understood who is a wanderer, what is meant by being lost. Okay, we have understood the relationship between the two, and now we'll have to take a stand on it. So what will be the thesis? The topic reflects the idea that those who may appear lost or aimless may in fact be on some alternate, heroic quest or on a journey to discover something that is very prized, that is very valuable. Okay, so this is what the essence of the topic basically says. This is the wisdom of the topic. Now, having taken this stand, we then have to go about arguing as to how this is right. So with the help of examples, data, facts, etc. from multiple different sources and dimensions, we try to present how the wisdom of the topic is relevant. Okay, so let us exfoliate the keywords now here. What is meant by wandering? Wandering could mean multiple things at multiple levels. The keyword beholds within itself a lot of deeper meaning. Only by understanding the deeper meaning can we give justice to the full import of the topic. So what is the essence of wandering? Wandering leads to new exploration. A person who gets out of his comfort zone and tries to seek a new alternate reality, who wants to reach some new destination, he will end up gaining something in the process. The best example we have seen that of Gautam Buddha. He left his home to basically pursue and find out the ultimate truth of the world, and he did find it in the end in the form of nirvana. And personal growth and self-discovery. Whenever a person shuns his comfort zone, sets out and tries to go and find out something, in that process his personal growth is enhanced. He becomes a more better individual. He develops qualities, values, standards, in the due process even skills and knowledge that make him a much better person or individual than he was before. So it definitely leads to a lot of growth. Take the example of Dhirubhai Ambani. In his youth, he left the country, went abroad and did odd and different types of jobs. And in that process, he developed the knowledge and confidence which he will later come and implement as a successful entrepreneur in India. So his wandering ultimately led to the creation of a new kind of person. That means self-discovery, of course, okay, wherein you understand yourself much better. When you leave your comfort zones, you then try to understand what sort of a person you are. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your limitations? And how you can overcome them. That is the journey of self-discovery. Okay? That is the journey through which you become a more complete individual, where you develop your knowledge, skills, attitudes, where you develop better qualities, virtues, and habits. That happens when you start a quest for wandering. A person who is wandering is not just wandering in physical sense. That wandering could also be in an intellectual sense, where a person tries to grope with different types of ideas and tries to find what is the ultimate solution to the current problem. Karl Marx is one of the best examples for this. Karl Marx, as a young rebel, he tried to dabble into different types of ideas. He was ultimately exiled from his own country, from one of the German states, and he had to go and seek asylum or refuge in England. And in England, he then saw the exploitation of the laborers or factory workers in Industrial Revolution. That moved him to the core, and he wanted to find out what will be an alternative system in which this exploitation of man by man will stop. That starts him on a quest of wandering to find what is the solution, what is the best idea for the current way of life. And from those thoughts emerges the idea of modern day socialism, later on which will also be called as communism. Why is that happening? Because he embarked on that quest for knowledge. Then creativity and innovation. A wanderer is able to create something new. He is able to start something new. Thomas Alva Edison, for example, he was also a wanderer. He tried several thousand times to develop a light bulb, and every time he failed. But that wandering did not stop. He had not lost. And in his own words, he said, I have only found several thousand ways of not doing it. Okay, ultimately I'll find, of course, how it is to be done, which he did and revolutionized the world. So he was a wanderer in that sense, but he was not lost. Breaking free from conformity. This is another aspect of wandering connected with the above thing. It's a corollary of it. Okay, struggling for change or reform. Those reformers who tried their level best to turn around the socio-political systems, economic challenges of their times. Take the case of Savitribai Phule. Now she helps her husband in running school, first girls' school in India, in the city of Pune. Along the way, she is harassed by many people around her. But she is not deterred. She is committed to that small change that is going to be brought about in the lives of few people. One would wonder at that point of time, why is she bearing all of those challenges and problems for a handful of students? But she knew that that wandering is going to change or reform the society on a very big scale. Several decades down the line, we can see the result, the outcome of that start or that change or that wandering that was done in that day and age. So this is the nature of wandering, guys. Okay. Now, wandering essentially also requires that you embrace uncertainty and resist the fear of unknown. Whenever you wander, you are leaving your comfort zone behind and you are entering into uncharted territories. And whenever you enter into uncharted territories, there is obviously always the fear of unknown as to what will happen, what will be the outcome of all of these efforts. Just like a caterpillar weaves around itself a cocoon, completely gets segregated, goes into a shell, and does not know what will, come out of it, how it will come out of it, what will be its next stage. Similarly, a person who is wandering, he or she has to, accept this feeling of fear of unknown, the feeling of constantly being in uncertainty. That is a challenge that wanderers always face. It's a cost that they have to pay for, developing some alternate future, a new reality, innovating something, bringing about some change or reform. Take the case of various social justice related movements in India. See how for last several years, the LGBTQ community in India has struggled to get a status of dignity and equality. Along the way, they have been harassed, they have been called names, they have been heckled and abused. All sort of things have been done against them, but they stayed steadfast and they have been able to achieve some success in that journey. That is that acceptance of that uncertainty. Same is the case with different other types of movement, maybe environmentalist movement, feminist movements, movements for caste-based equality, so on and so forth. So when you start out on these sort of journeys, you are actually in the process of wandering. You don't know what will be the outcome, but that does not mean that you are lost. Nelson Mandela, for more than 2 decades, was in the jail, but he did not compromise. He did not give up on his vision. Just because his vision was not achieved, we cannot say that he was lost. Yes, he was wandering. He was not yet there at his final destination, but he was definitely not lost. And these are the characteristics that we can say about wanderers. So I hope you understood what the topic is basically trying to say. And based on this, you can then develop or build up your arguments. What can be some counter viewpoints in this context? What is the opposite of it? Okay. There's a concept called as survivorship bias. What do we mean by this bias? We have a bias for those who do not get lost after wandering. But what about those who will actually do? So in that process, as the topic itself says, not all who wander are lost. So what does this topic itself imply? That there will be some people who wander and who get lost in that process. So we always focus on the Gautam Buddhas of the day, the Nelson Mandelas of the day, and that always tends to strengthen our view or belief in the wisdom. But then for every Gautam Buddha, for every Nelson Mandela, there will be scores of others who wandered and eventually they got lost. We tend to overlook that. So that should also not happen. We have to factor in this reality of survivor bias also. Then potential for wasted time. Wandering without a purpose or goal can lead to significant amount of time and resources being wasted without tangible results. Okay, a lot of potential, a lot of talent, a lot of resource can go down the drain because of heedless kind of wandering. While wandering, one has to remain realistic about achievement of the goals that have been set. The planning methodology used during this process has to be a sound one. So I hope you are able to get this, guys. Okay. All right, let's get started. Counter viewpoint, risk of disconnection. Individuals who prioritize aimless exploration over obligations to family, work, or community may find themselves isolated or struggling to meet their core obligations. Now, those people who enter into this process of wandering, they may end up not fulfilling their other commitments. So we have to remember that while this pursuit of wandering might be worthy in some cases, but at the same time, one cannot overlook the other commitments that one has. And this is necessary for the rights and duties of rights towards other people also. The resources that we are consuming in the process, the losses that we are causing to others, all of that is also very significant while we embark on these wandering journeys. But very often those who wander, they do not connect with this aspect. Okay. Pre-conclusion remark, linkage with Indian administration. How wandering in realm of bureaucratic rigidities led to loss of purpose. Our purpose, the nature of our state, the Indian state, is that of a welfare state. But because of overemphasis on rules, regulations, on systems and procedures, often what do we see? That in the maze of bureaucracy, the real purpose actually gets lost. So that kind of a wandering often hurts the real purpose that the state has set out for itself. And that we can see in the case of bureaucracy, administration at different stages in the history of India. So we need to reorient ourselves. We need to find out what the real goal is and stay true to it and not allow such wandering to actually cause such losses. Okay. So in this manner, guys, we can deal with this topic of not all those who wander are lost. Towards the end, as we have discussed earlier, we can frame or draft a conclusion that leaves a comment which summarizes and at the same time gives a futuristic view regarding the wisdom of the topic. One good way of doing it will be in this manner. Not all who wander are lost invites us to navigate the complexities of life with an open heart. Yes, wandering will most often lead to achievement of some great dreams, and therefore one must not lose heart, one must not lose courage while going on such pursuits. We must have an open heart and a curious mind which embraces this uncertainty and spontaneity, to recognize that even those who appear to be wandering aimlessly, a person might be going about and doing or pursuing some goal. Like for example, Maji was trying to break down a massive mountain, and to those people around him, he seemed to be a foolish man trying to achieve the impossible. But years and years of effort and the ultimate result convinced all the naysayers that yes, Maji was not lost. Okay, he was definitely achieving something of great value for people. So we must recognize that even those who may appear to be wandering aimlessly may have profound journeys within themselves, journeys of self-discovery and growth. When you take on such challenges, the journey is as much inside as it is outside. When Gautam Buddha was traveling around different places, he was also journeying within himself. And it is that journey within, that journey of self-growth, of self-realization that ultimately helps you to achieve great things in life. So those who are wandering are definitely on these kind of tracks or pursuits. It is an intellectual call to balance the pursuit of goals and pursuit of wisdom. Both the aspects have to be balanced, acknowledging that both are valuable and at times they are intertwined with each other. So we have to develop the skill of balancing both these aspects together. So this was a brief kind of overview regarding how you could understand this given topic and try to interpret it. Thus we have completed, guys, 3 topics from section A. After this, we are going to take up the 4th topic, but for that I'll have to open up another file, so just give me a quick second for that. All right. So after having seen the first three topics of section A, we can now move on to the fourth topic of section A, the last one for this section, which is inspiration for creativity springs from the effort to look for the magical in the mundane. Inspiration for creativity, as in that, great resolve or desire for creating something new actually comes from where? Where does it come from? It comes from the effort to look for what is magical in the mundane. As in, there is something routine and yet it has something very special about it. When you are able to see that something which is routine and yet special, that is where you derive the inspiration of doing something creative. That is what the topic essentially is trying to tell us. Let us try to see how we can approach this topic. Here we have to basically deal with the idea of creativity being creativity being inspired by what is hidden in the mundane. Okay, so there are two aspects over here. One is inspiration and second is creativity. The relationship between the two is the effort to see what is magical in the mundane. So we have two pillars. On one side you have the inspiration for creativity. On the other side we have the magical hidden thing in the mundane, and between them we have the relationship that if you are able to sight that, if you are able to look for it, if you are able to locate it, then in that case you will be able to unlock that inspiration for creativity. That is what the topic tells us. So we are going to argue that creativity thrives when we are able to uncover the extraordinary within the ordinary. There are certain things which will be hidden within the ordinary, within the routine, within the word mundane, as the topic says. And when we are able to see that, that is when we will be able to unlock that inspiration for creativity. This perspective drives innovation across art, science and technology. You take up any field of life of human endeavor and you will see that this same perspective actually drives creativity. May it be science, may it be art, may it be technology, in all the spheres, this is the same driving force. This creativity leads to growth. It leads to solving of everyday problems, and also in due course, it changes the trajectory of human history. This is what we are actually going to approach the essay in this manner. It serves as a catalyst for progress and enriches human experience. So we are basically going to unlock how, when somebody is able to notice that magic in the mundane or routine stuff, that person gets inspired to create something new, create something special, and as a result of that, this growth, progress, development can actually happen. Now, how can we start this essay? I hope by now you have understood the methodology in which we break down the topic, we disaggregate it, identify the keywords, and then we go about exfoliating the topic. Now, how do we start this particular topic? As we have noted in the previous topics, the start of the essay particularly has to be very catchy. And for that reason, we can use different types of examples, stories, case studies, etc. How the wisdom of the topic is actually encapsulated in that story or that anecdote is what is going to make your essay really stand out. Now, I have given you an example in the earlier session also. The women from Africa, they used to travel great distances to fetch water. And for not only was the travel a very long distance, but at the same time, the drudgery of carrying all that weight on their head had also caused a lot of medical issues for them, particularly spondylitis. And consequently, seeing that mundane thing and something that was hidden over there, that opportunity for making the lives of those women better, a product was developed which was like a pitcher which could carry water and could be rolled like a tire. A very simple innovation, but it had a great creative side to it which helped to solve problems of many. So you can take up any such story and try to solve that problem. Some very simple and basic innovations, creative innovations, can solve the most depressing of problems also. Walking on the sand, we can also talk about this. Walking on the sand, taking a stroll on a beach. On that same stand, we can realize that it is hidden with silica. It can be used to manufacture semiconductors. It can also be having very rich minerals. Like, in case of India, we have ample reserves of thorium, and those are concentrated on our, western coast in the southern part of India. So these are mundane realities. It's just that somebody has to be able to see and locate that. When you are able to locate that, then that inspires creativity. Springs of creativity means what? A lot of new things, novel things can happen out of that. Take the case of, the crop residue, the problem of crop residue in many parts of North India. That crop residue does not have any economic value, and therefore the farmer is compelled to light and burn it. Okay, but over the recent times, some very innovative products have been developed out of that same crop residue, and consequently now the farmer is actually encouraged that he should save that crop residue and sell it off, as it will provide some economic value to him. So this is nothing but that ability to look for the magical in the mundane and start something creative out of it. So in this manner, you can take some examples and start your essay. Creativity is the spark that ignites our imagination and enables us to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. This is our thesis statement. We agree broadly with what the topic is saying. What fuels this is inexhaustible well of creativity. It is the ability to see the extraordinary within the ordinary and to find the magical in the mundane. It reminds us that the world is full of wonder waiting to be discovered by us, even in the most ordinary of circumstances. So if we are able to see something hidden in our current lives, then that can have a big impact or change on many things around us. That is what the topic says, and broadly we can agree with the thesis statement. Dimensions that can be brought out of it. Art and aesthetics. How can we prove that this is a reality? We can give examples from art and aesthetics. Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. Starry Night, artists in this particular ensemble, they take commonplace objects, scenes and emotions and elevate them to a realm of the extraordinary. So commonplace objects are used by this musical ensemble, and great performances are produced out of it, out of using very simple, basic and commonplace items. Those items which normally we would not even imagine can produce such great work of art and aesthetics. So that is a vision that these people have had, and that is what substantiates the wisdom of the topic. That is what the topic is basically saying, that inspiration for creativity springs from effort to look for the magical in the mundane. Startups and small businesses. We can give several examples from the field of startups and small businesses. Take the case of Uber and Airbnb. The entire idea of Airbnb started out from a group of friends who were discussing, based on problems that they were facing to find accommodations when they traveled. And that sparked the idea of starting something on this sort, where people who had spaces could rent them out to people who were looking for, small durations of stays. So without actually creating a formal brick and mortar kind of a hotel for accommodation, these people were able to use what was available, what was mundane, what we were seeing every day, and transform it into an economic resource for the owner, for themselves, and provide a great service to people who were looking for it. Similarly, we can also cite the example of Uber and such other aggregators. The sheer fact that people required some convenience in terms of travel, they required safety, they required assurity. All of that was something that was mundane. But then somebody had to look at it in a special way and find out that here is a solution or a creative idea to solve this particular problem. In this manner, we can give many examples. The Dabbawalas of Mumbai, they are also a great case study in that regard. People in Mumbai travel great distances to work. Some of them commuting, 2 hours both ways. And naturally, they have to start out early from their homes. And this makes it difficult for the homemakers to actually provide for tiffins. Now, that was something that was routine and mundane. But then the Dabbawalas saw this thing in a different way. Of course, it's a very long tradition, but then it is the same attitude. Seeing something magical in the mundane, that springs that creativity. A unique type of service that enables these people to get home cooked meal, hot home cooked meal in time in their office. It has such a great impact on the lives of all concerned. Okay. Then science and innovation. Isaac Newton's observation, again that same example guys, of the apple dropping on his head. That same thing could have happened to so many different people. Most others would have simply consumed that apple and forgotten about it. But then in that mundane thing, Newton saw something different, and consequently it led to development of something very crucial, which is so much at the base of all our modern science and technological development. Same is the case with development of iPhones also. iPhones initially designed for only communication. Now see how many different types of services they are providing. Take the case of Amazon, the big Amazon company. What did it start out as? It started out only as an online bookstore, and see how many different types of things. In fact, nothing under the sun, one can say, is unavailable at Amazon. So all of that because the ability to see something magical in the mundane, that creates, or from that springs, great creativity. Okay. Economy and finance. The products like or services like UPI payments. UPI payments, National Payment Corporation of India has brought about a financial revolution today. It has become so easy for people to pay. This has revolutionized the Indian economy. Even beggars these days, I have seen that they also have, those QR codes. If you don't have a change, you no more have an excuse now. You can't say ki chutta nahi hai. They immediately pop up a QR code to be scanned using your favorite UPI application. So this is again seeing something different. People have this problem. They want to pay, but then it's difficult. That is the mundane thing. The UPI apps basically look at that mundane thing in a different way, and that stems creativity. And that creativity then leads to so many benefits. So many different types of ventures, initiatives, companies could survive. Small traders, they could survive because UPI facilitated the ease of payment. Renewable energy. Everybody was experiencing the warmth of the sun. Okay, we had been using it for so many different purposes, but then somebody had the vision of seeing it differently, and from that solar energy was developed. Okay, that energy or that potential was exploited to do something very constructive for the society. Solar energy now, in terms of cost of production, has come down tremendously at a rate that was not imagined more than 10 years ago. In fact, some people are arguing, you might have read the articles, that we need to slow down this because we are not yet ready to transition towards solar energy fully, because our existing infrastructure is more geared towards the conventional forms. So that is the change that it has been able to bring about. Something so ubiquitous, something as ubiquitous as the energy of the sun, the warmth, the light that we see. It required somebody to look at it differently. And here, voila, we have the results. Okay. Biofuels, driving vehicles with cleaner, simple fuels. This can also be another example, guys. Okay. We were all, through our history, using many different types of agricultural products, and the waste or residue of that was discarded away. We did not know what to do out of it. It did not have any economic value until we discovered that biofuels can be developed out of it. And now we are having mixing of biofuels. We are going to transition slowly towards more and more of these cleaner fuels. What is this a result of? Again, the same thing. The inspiration for creativity springs from the effort to look at the magical in the mundane. The residue of the crops were a mundane thing, but we saw or looked at it differently, and that is what made all the difference. Similarly, examples can be cited, arguments can be made from the field of administration also. Armstrong Palming, he created the People's Road in northeastern India, where a particular village did not have access to road. He created People's Road through crowdfunding. A problem was there. Everybody was seeing it. Nobody had the vision of trying to turn things around. He looks at it and sees it differently. That's why a poet says, "Soch badlo, sitare badlenge. Nazar badlo, nazare badlenge." Effort to look for the magical in the mundane. सोच बदलो सितारे बदलेंगे, नजर बदलो नजारे बदलेंगे, कश्ती बदलने की जरूरत नहीं, रुख बदलो किनारे बदलेंगे. So that creativity stems out or springs out of that new look. Operation Suleimani, another example from administration. The famous district magistrate Prashant Nair, he started this campaign called as Compassionate Kozhikode or Operation Suleimani, where people will not be allowed to go hungry. He ensured the food security of people, that each and every person in the district had access to sumptuous meals at a very fraction of a cost. So all of these are actually examples of looking at the thesis statement that we are arguing. Dimensions, again, problem solving or challenges. While all of this is true and valid, we still face a lot of challenges in overcoming or in actually implementing the wisdom of the topic. So how can we go about doing that? How can we inculcate the wisdom of the topic? We have to provide some suggestions. Consider a chef in a bustling restaurant kitchen. They lack ordinary, they take ordinary ingredients like flour, water and yeast and transform them into magical delight of freshly baked bread. On a personal level, seeking the magical in the mundane is a pathway to self-discovery and personal growth. The more we practice this, the more we are able to locate and see what is there inside the mundane, the more we are able to understand ourselves better. We are able to serve the people around us, the society, country at large, humanity at large in a better way. The daily routines and tasks of life seem routine, but they can provide us opportunities for mindfulness and reflections. These opportunities, as we go about in our life, if only we have a different view or approach of looking at them, they will, come to life, and they will tell us what are the hidden things that we can actually do and achieve using those very same things which are ubiquitous, which are available everywhere. It's just that it requires a different view of looking at it. It's all about the way you look at it, the approach that you have towards it. Okay. Now, antithesis of this topic. We have understood what the thesis of the topic says. Now let us look at the counter side or alternate perspective. AI usage is, now a lot of these examples that we saw, say for example, the different aggregator type of services that we are seeing, many of these things are now based on artificial intelligence. AI is increasingly being used to look at the mundane and try to provide some creativity out of it. But as a counter side, very often what happens is this AI ends up killing the creativity. The machines can do a fantastic job, but they cannot ever replace the human touch. So a lot of times when we are looking for the magical in the mundane and using artificial intelligence and such other latest technologies, then what is happening is we are killing human creativity in that process. Some will use AI for creativity, but for majority, creativity is going to end because of it. Only a few handful people who have the skill, the technological edge of using this kind of technology, they can benefit from it. But for most others, it is not going to be of any use. Okay. Specific class of intellectuals, Gramsci's manufacturing consent. Okay. It should be Noam Chomsky actually, manufacturing consent. Very often what happens is when such alternative type of products or systems are developed, in that case, a consent is manufactured about them. That is what Noam Chomsky says, that using technology, using the bombardment of propaganda, people are convinced about a particular idea or concept without actually they realizing that they are being led in that particular direction. So that should not happen. Circumstances for thinking, societal norms, controlling mind, reducing innovation. So what we need to do is we need to provide the space where people can actually think for themselves and not be led by others in that process. That is when truly people will be able to, bring out what is hidden in the mundane. So in this manner, we can deal with some antitheses points of it also. Embracing the idea that inspiration can be found in everyday experience is crucial for fostering innovation. Creativity, guys, does not fall from the sky. It ultimately is always building up on what is pre-existing. The problems exist as well as the resources do. It's just that we need to look at the resources in a different manner. Therefore, we need to have an approach or attitude of fostering innovation and ensuring a brighter, more imaginative kind of future. As we now navigate the complexities of our ever-changing world, we must remember that most ordinary of things can hold the spark for great creativity and potential for magic. This is, something that we must always bear in mind, that something might appear to be very commonplace, but it might hold within itself the potential of solving a big problem, bringing about a great change. The magic is not just out there, it is actually within us. This is a crucial theme, guys. The resources that are everywhere around us, they by themselves do not hold any magic within them. It is our approach or attitude towards them that brings about the change, waiting to be uncovered in the world around us. So it's just that we need to actually make the most of this opportunity and look at things in a different perspective, try to explore them and use the resources to try to bring about some creative change or difference for the mankind as such. So this is what the topic actually wanted to present before us. So we've understood the fourth topic that was asked in today's exam. Let us now take an overview regarding the fifth topic. Girls are weighed down by restrictions. Girls are weighed down by restrictions and boys with demands. Okay, the topic has not been fully printed here. लड़कियां बंदिशों के तथा लड़के अपेक्षा के बोझ तले दबे हुए होते हैं, दोनों ही समान रूप से हानिकारक व्यवस्थाएं हैं. Okay, so what the topic is basically saying is that girls are weighed down by restriction, whereas boys are with demands. So girls have to face this problem, restrictions, and boys have to face the challenge of demands. And because of this, rather both of these are equally problematic. That is what the topic is trying to tell us. So while girls face different types of restrictions, it is not as if the boys are also free. Boys may not have the same sort of restrictions, but then they are burdened with many different types of demands, and these demands actually play the same kind of inimical role for boys as they play for girls, as restrictions play for girls. That is what the topic is trying to say. So how are we going to approach the topic? We will introduce the topic by providing some story, case study, example, etc. We'll break down first how girls are weighed down by restrictions, and then in the second part, how boys are weighed down by demands. Okay, so we'll try to find out in both the cases as to why this is the case, how this is happening with girls and how this is happening with boys respectively, and why this kind of a scenario actually takes place. We try to understand all of these things. So let us get started, guys. Multi-dimensional impact of these harmful disciplines. When girls and boys are weighed down by restrictions and demands like this, then naturally this has a very detrimental impact, not just on that individual, but also on the society, nation, and humanity as such. Even a single individual who has not been able to achieve his or her fullest potential is going to be is going to have a detrimental impact on the larger, collectives of human beings, may that be at societal level, national level, or international level. Then we'll try to understand, are these two disciplines equally harmful? What restrictions girls face and what demands boys face, the kind of impact they have on them respectively, Are they equally harmful? We'll understand that. And then countering these harmful disciplines, how we can go about doing that is what we'll try to see. Let's go ahead. Introduction. India, a nation heralded for its rich cultural heritage and a history spanning millennia, is also a place where gender disparities endured for generations. So in our country, as well as countries similar to us, third world countries, we have seen that gender-based discriminations have existed, have endured despite our best efforts. Even after 75 years of independence and several proactive legal and other measures, we continue to see that these kind of disparities, these kind of suppressions and exploitations, they continue to occur. The intricate web of expectations that is put upon girls. A girl is supposed to carry the honor of the family. And since she is the carrier of the honor, she has to behave in a certain way. She has to always fulfill the expectations that have been put on her by society, family, and culture. She has to, for example, return to her place of residence before a certain time, wear certain types of clothes only. She has to be very conscious about intermingling with people of opposite gender. So all of these types of things, what do? They put restrictions on girls and inhibit their aspirations, stop their ambitions in terms of education, so on and so forth. Many such things happen for girls. Now, while this is something that is very well accepted and acknowledged as such, but on the similar lines, boys also face various different types of societal demands. Girls face restrictions, whereas boys are suppressed by demands. And these demands are also weighing down boys. What are the kind of demands? We'll talk about them in detail shortly. Demands conforming to their specific type of masculinity norms. Boys are supposed to behave in a certain manner. Boys are not supposed to cry. Boys are not supposed to get emotional. They always have to be in that alpha male kind of a person who is always leading from the front. Now that kind of approach or attitude society often has from boys. A boy has to be competitive. He has to be the breadwinner. He has to earn more than his wife. He may not be allowed to work in his home, as in not provide domestic care. All of these are what? These are demands or expectations that society has from boys, and these two, the topic says, are equally harmful as restrictions of girls. Now, girls weighed down by traditional restrictions, that certainly is something that is very well acknowledged. We all know that women are expected to act, behave, appear, and do things in a certain way. There are certain types of standards that society has, expectations that society has from women. That those standards might relate to beauty, to behavior, to appearance, to the kind of practices that the girl has, all of these things. And naturally, these have a very detrimental impact on the development of the girls. What happens because of it is that a girl is not able to fully optimize, fully develop her personality to the fullest possible extent. These restrictions do not allow her to go out and seek the career of her choice, or seek the life partner of her choice, or live the life on her own terms. These are the kind of restrictions that society imposes on girls. Okay. Like here we can give different types of examples. What are the different types of restrictions? Emotionally, girls are weighed down by restrictions like, in terms of emotions, they are not expected to express their feelings, their emotions in a vocal manner. Their feelings of anger, aggressiveness, or such other feelings are seen in a negative light. Instead, they have to have a certain type of demeanor, certain type of behavior, certain type of virtues. Okay, a girl always has to be empathetic. She has to be soft-spoken. She has to be extra polite. What are these? These are restrictions. Family and marriage. In a patriarchal society like ours, and also many others, what do we see? There are restrictions on the choices that a woman can make. Okay, choices from selecting life partner, choices related to having birth, or family planning. all of these things the girl cannot decide. It is the male, a member of the family, who actually decides it. Similarly, in terms of careers too, there are certain set norms. Although these are breaking over recent times, but nevertheless, we are still far away from a status of equality. Certain careers are considered to be suitable for girls. So even when they have chances of developing their career, they are limited to certain areas only. Okay, a girl can or should become a banker or should have a receptionist kind of a role, but she is not encouraged to have those roles which will involve a lot of physical challenge, which may involve a lot of intellectual rigor, which may involve some risk to physical well-being. For example, in the army, although we have now women in the armed forces, but then in terms of combat roles, still there are a lot of restrictions. Yes, a lot of earlier barriers are breaking, but still we are not at par when it comes to men and women in different career opportunities. In economy also, then we can give many different types of examples of how the girl is not able to make her own economic decisions. The earnings that she makes is again not subjected to her own agency. The family head decides upon her income. Many such kind of restrictions can be seen on girls, and these restrictions naturally stifle her ambition. They limit her opportunity. Okay, girls are weighed down by restrictions and boys with demands. This is what we are discussing, guys. Boys, on the other hand, they too face their own types of demons. They too face their own types of challenges. What kind of challenges? Boys are not supposed to cry, not even in the most toughest of situations. This is a cultural or societal norm. This stifles up or bottles up the emotions of boys, leading to a lot of adversarial impact on emotional, mental as well as physical health. There are certain types of clothing related norms also. Certain colors are considered to be feminine and certain colors are supposed to be masculine. A boy wearing feminine colors is considered as weak, or he is not fit amongst his peers. All of these types of ideas continue to endure, guys. Physically, a boy is expected to have robust physical strength. His masculinity or his worth as such in his friend circle is often seen on the basis of the kind of physical phenotype he has. This is not the case with girls. In terms of relationship, not to show equality towards the spouse. A husband who shows or extends a status of equality to his spouse is considered as a weak sort of a husband in various cultural settings. While this is again changing, but then in many areas, in many places, we see that these kind of ideas all continue to endure. Marrying, when a man marries, he is considered to be entitled to dowry. Although we have laws, we have taken very stringent measures against this, but then the practice continues. We see a lot of exploitation of women also taking place. The man is expected to accept a dowry or ask for dowry. These kind of social norms do continue to remain enduring. Careers, guys are supposed to develop certain types of careers. Engineering, policing, army, these kind of roles are considered cut out for guys. But if a guy takes on a career which is considered as more suitable to women, then in that case, he will not be given the same kind of respect amongst his peers, amongst his family, so on and so forth. So we have a categorization. Although it is now easier perhaps for women to enter into the domain of those careers which were exclusively for men earlier, but the reverse exactly cannot be said to be true. Economy wise, he is expected to be the breadwinner of the family, bear the entire expense or cost of the family. Now this also needs to change. Now as women are taking more and more education, entering into jobs, that old idea that man is the provider of the family, that is something that has not yet changed to a great degree. That is another demand that is expected of men. And because of these things, we are finding that men are finding it difficult to even get life partners based on the sort of expectations that the societies have from boys. Culturally, he is supposed to be the Kul Deepak of the family, the one who carries the legacy of the family forward. Now, while this is a demand, it is also other way around too. This expectation that only the boy can be the carrier of the family's name and legacy is something that is unfair to girls also. So this attitude regarding boys and girls having separate approaches towards them in terms of family legacy is also another problem that we can see in our society. So in this manner, guys, we can, through examples, present our arguments as to how society continues to bog down both girls and boys with certain demands and expectations which are actually harmful for their own growth and development. While girls have always had these restrictions and those are acknowledged, but in case of boys, these are more subtle and consequently not as well noticed. And therefore, the topic tells us that both the scenarios are equally detrimental, and consequently we need to reform or change this. Okay, so this was our fifth topic, guys. Okay, impact of these two harmful disciplines. So we have seen and exfoliated both the sides, what problems boys face and what problems girls face. Now, what is the impact of these kind of demands and restrictions? Limiting of personal growth. Limiting of personal growth. Boys and girls both, because of these respective problems that they face, the nature might be different, the expectations might be different, but in both the cases, the outcome is the same, limiting of personal growth. Because of this limitation, the society and country as such does not develop and prosper. And this has a very detrimental impact on the society. Society as such overall, nation as such is not able to progress when we have stifled the growth and progress of our own people in this manner. So these kind of social norms need to change. Okay. Now, while we have argued in line with what the topic says, there can also be counter arguments as well. Okay. Are the two disciplines equally harmful or not? That is what we are saying. Now let us see arguments in favor. Reinforces gender stereotypes. Limits individual freedoms and self-expression. Means these kind of restrictions, they limit individual freedom and self-expression. Now, a girl might have her own choices. She has a mind of her own. She may want to pursue a certain type of career. But when the family restricts and does not allow that, what does it lead to? It leads to lack of freedom. It adversely affects emotional well-being of these people. Girls and boys who are not allowed to fully flourish and develop their personality, bogged down by these limitations and restrictions. What happens because of that? Their overall emotional well-being is affected because of it. Overall gender inequality is perpetuated in the society. In this day and age, where both the genders must be considered equal and given equal opportunity, what do we see instead of that? We see that gender inequality is perpetuated. Men and women, both of them face different types of challenges and problems in this process. Okay. Arguments against. Counter side of it, we are discussing now. Biological limitations. What do we mean by biological limitations? Here we are trying to posit the counter side of it. Now, what can happen is that certain expectations and demands might be based on certain specific factors, and those factors may justify those specific demands and restrictions. For example, biological restrictions. There are certain types of works or chores which can be done by boys better because of their maybe physical strength. Therefore, such limitations may not be harmful for certain contexts. Okay. Now, we cannot paint a broad brush over here, but then broadly speaking, it may so happen that certain works or certain areas may be naturally more suitable biologically for one of the gender. Cultural limitations. To preserve the culture, to bind the families together, and also to help an organized sharing of work as well, we can find these kind of restrictions. Societal limitations. Society has not yet matured, although we have advanced tremendously. As a society that is increasingly getting modernized, we are leaving behind those cultural norms which are redundant for this day and age. But yet, we cannot holistically say that entire society as such has matured. We still continue to believe in certain age-old practices which are out of sync with our times. And consequently, these limitations will persist till overall maturity of the society increases. Now, that is a process that will take time, and it cannot happen, overnight. It has to be given a lot of time to actually follow its due or natural course. Similarly, infrastructural limitations. Like at times, some of these restrictions could also be related to infrastructure. Like, for example, girls being employed in certain types of areas or vocations might not be feasible at that point because of certain infrastructural limitations or challenges. So this naturally, in a way, tries to present the other side or other picture of this topic. Now, while both girls and boys suffer in this process, and the suffering of boys is not as much acknowledged, that is also a reality. But at the same time, we should also accept the fact that overall, the inhibiting aspect of these restrictions on girls has a much more detrimental effect on them than the burdensome demands that are made or expected of boys. So in comparison, if we were to talk, then we have to understand this limitation also, that girls overall suffer more because of these societal norms and constructs than what boys do suffer. Okay. Now, countering these harmful disciplines, how can we change this? What should be the solutions and ideas? We need to break the barriers that our society has created in this context. The barriers or challenges that we have created for respective genders have to be brought down consciously through various laws, through various governance policies and measures, through role modeling, through different types of initiatives through civil society. We need to bring down these barriers so that these two disciplines that we have imposed on boys and girls are actually curtailed. So in this manner, guys, we can try to approach this topic. Okay. Now let us take the next topic for today, section B. This is mathematics is the music of reason. Now this was a slightly challenging topic. Mathematics is the music of reason. It is trying to draw an analogy between mathematics and music. Music and mathematics have certain characteristics. Music, of course, is an art form with its own inherent qualities, features, etc. The essay posits that mathematics has an uncanny similarity with respect to reason as music has. So let us try to understand if there is any such similarity or analogy over there. What do we need to basically find out over here? Similarity between mathematics and music. Linkage between maths and reason also for that perspective needs to be clarified. Unless we explain how maths is related to reason, we cannot understand how music is analogous over here. Why maths is considered as the music of reason? Then we arrive at it. So first we see the similarity between the two. We see the interconnection of mathematics and reason, and then we can deduce how maths is considered the music of reason. And based on this, we can give a way ahead and conclude this essay. So it's a little abstract topic. Let us try to deal it the best we can. Similarity between mathematics and music. Let us first try to establish that relationship between the two. Similar to music, mathematics is to engage in act of discovery and conjecture. Just as in music, a musician tries to play different types of instruments in different melodies, in different ragas, and tries to have an interplay of all of those. On similar lines, mathematics is also about same thing. It is about trying to discover or uncover some mathematical realities, much as music tries to do in its own field. Example can be discovery of the Pythagoras theorem in this context. So just as a musician tries to create a beautiful composition, on similar lines, we also have this in field of mathematics. Intuition and inspiration. Just as in case of music, we see that there is an element of intuition where the musician, he composes based on his gut feeling, what he strongly feels about, what resonates with him from within. On similar lines, mathematician will also use his inner intuition and inspiration to create something magical in his field. A great example is of Srinivas Ramanujan, who contributed in pure mathematics without having any formal knowledge about it. So where was his contribution actually being derived from? It was being derived from intuition and inspiration. Now, his last notebooks just before his death, when they were read, they clearly showed the kind of excitement that he had about mathematics despite not being formally trained in it. Similarly, Aryabhatta, the great Indian mathematician, he discovered the entity of zero. Without understanding zero, without understanding shunya, there could not have been any mathematics. There could not have been any subsequent development in any field of science. Science requires quantification. It requires measurement. And without zero, there couldn't be any measurement in the first place. Where are these things coming from? They are again coming from intuition and inspiration. So on similar lines to music, mathematics is also in many ways derived from intuition and inspiration. Then to be in a state of confusion, that is not to know what your creation can lead to. This is also a characteristic that we see commonly in both. When a mathematician is trying to explore different theories, different types of ideas in the subject, and a musician is trying to build, a composition. In both the cases, there is a state of confusion where both do not know what the outcome will be. Yet they pursue it, and out of that, something new and beautiful is created. A characteristic that both share. To have a breakthrough idea. Just as in case of music, there can be a aha moment, a breakthrough moment, which can result into creation of a new kind of aspect or dimension about music. Similarly, in case of science also, something similar can happen. Newton's contribution in calculus, in that sense, can be cited as an example. Newton is like that full flourish of the scientific revolution. All that was said earlier by Copernicus, by Galileo, and many others, Newton puts all of that into its final perspective. So he is the high water mark of that scientific revolution that Europe saw in the 16th and 17th centuries. That is what we can say about music also. In case of music too, there can be these breakthrough moments which define the music ever after. Recent research in which mathematical models were used to gain new insights of how breast cancer metastasizes. Again, this is an example of how mathematics can be used to have some major breakthrough ideas. Mathematics is not just limited to counting, is not just limited to figuring out something in a quantitative manner. It can also give us insights into various different fields of human life, including in medicine. So a recent research project has informed us about the issue of breast cancer and how the cancer cells, they metastasize because of the development in mathematics. So there can be several breakthrough developments in music as well as in mathematics. To be frustrated as an artist, to be awed and overwhelmed by painful beauty, to be alive, all of these things are essentially characteristics of musicians who go on to create great pieces based on that. The same thing can be said about mathematics as well. The sheer pent-up energy of trying to solve certain mathematical question will be very similar to what a musical artist will feel when he tries to create a specific composition as such. So there are a lot of similarities between mathematics and music. Now let us try to correlate linkage between mathematics and reason. Maths is often described as a discipline rooted in pure reason. Why do we say so? Why is it connected with reason? Reason is based on cold facts, figures, empiricism basically. Okay, it is based on empirical observations, practical aspects. That is what reason relies on. Intuition, on the other hand, is something coming from within. It's a gut feeling. Reason is about cold facts. Reason is about data. Reason is about evidence. It is about evidence. Similarly, mathematics is also based on that. The foundation of mathematics is basically abstract reasoning, where we use numbers to deduce something, to quantify something, and that is what is the connection between the two. Reason is also based on this aspect, and similarly is the case of mathematics. Okay. Reason why maths is considered as music of reason then. Why is it the music of reason? What is the analogy over here? Both require passion. Okay? Just as in case of art, we have music, which is based on passion. Similarly, in case of reason, mathematics as a field of it, having so much of similarity with reason, it is also based on passion. There is a constant pursuit of knowledge in both. There is no end to it. There is no definite line where the pursuit of excellence in music or mathematics ends. So here also there is this clear analogy between the two. It can lead to collaborations for a greater good. Collaborations for betterment of humankind, for developing newer horizons, for advancing human knowledge in many areas. It inculcates logical thinking and reason. Mathematics, with its emphasis on numbers which are based on hard facts, it inculcates logical thinking and reason amongst those who subscribe to it. It results in creation which stand the test of time. Just as various different musical developments have stood the test of time, on very similar lines, various advancements in the field of mathematics also can be compared similarly, that they too have been able to stand the test of time. So these are the different aspects that we can argue as to how mathematics is music of reason. It provides harmony in patterns. Music of reason because it emphasizes beauty of patterns, symmetry and harmony. Pattern, symmetry and harmony. So music repeats in certain patterns. There are certain notes which are repeated one after another. And that beautiful repetition creates a pattern and harmony. The same thing can be said about mathematics also, which is based on, again, formulas. So music is also very formulaic in its creation, and so is mathematics. Mathematical concepts underpin various technological advancements. And in that sense, it is directly connected with aspect of reasoning. Reasoning is based on empirical evidences, logic, etc. Mathematics is also based on similar quantitative factors, and therefore we can say that it is the base of various technological advancements. Mathematical equation and concepts, they reveal inherent order in the universe. Much like how through music people are able to find an inner and ultimate solace, mathematics also in its own way tells you about an inherent order in the universe. Music gives you that inner melting, and mathematics tells you that there is an inherent order in the universe. Both in some ways are similar, guys. Both transcend culture and linguistic barriers. So we can see Aryabhatta here in India. He writes as Arya Bhatiya in Sanskrit language. And then later on in Europe, we will see so many different contributors in mathematics in their own respective vernacular languages. All are speaking different languages, yet they are communicating the same thing. Similarly, music also does not have a language barrier. People who understand music can understand it irrespective of language or cultural differences. Okay, mathematics is music of reason is what we are seeing. International collaborations are very common in both. A great example is the Silk Road Ensemble. The Silk Road Ensemble. What is the Silk Road Ensemble? It is the coming together of musicians from different parts along the ancient Silk Road and doing various different types of collaborations. The same type of collaborations we can see in the field of mathematics also, where mathematicians from across different countries have come together and created something phenomenal in their own field. You know about the CERN project, where apart from experts from physics and other fields, there were also a huge number of mathematicians who collaborated on that Large Hadron Collider project. So just as music can have this collaborative effort, mathematics also has it. Mathematics cultivates a problem-solving and logical thinking approach, and this is what is reasoning all about. Based on deductive logic, you are supposed to extract some reasons and try to solve problems. Mathematics also does the same thing. It has an attitude of solving problems. That is what our school textbooks, specifically mentioned, right? Problems, and we try to solve those problems. That is the approach that mathematics generates, and that is what logic also talks about. Okay, so in this sense, we can say that mathematics is having uncanny similarity to music in many ways, and it is the music of reason. Foundation of science and technology. Mathematics is the foundation of different types of science and technology, made by artificial intelligence, cryptography, data science in latest sense, or our traditional basic sciences. Whichever science you study, you cannot be divorced from mathematics. Whether you're studying chemistry or biology, there will always be some element of mathematics involved in your study, because that is the base that undergirds all basic sciences. Okay, basic of aesthetic work. Even artists, architects, painters, either through training or very often artists intuitively also, they have an understanding of maths, and that is why they're able to create the kind of masterpieces that they create. Without having understanding of maths, either through formal education or informally, if you don't have that understanding, then you cannot create such masterpieces in various different types of field. In India, we can give several examples from our ancient and medieval history, where we have used this advancement or knowledge of mathematics to further our study in various different types of field. The famous Jantar Mantar of Savai Jai Singh of the 18th century is a characteristic example of this very same thing. Okay. Economic significance of mathematics. Mathematics is relevant in economic finance, resource allocation, and many other aspects related to finance and economics. Without understanding mathematics, we will not be able to get the best of our economic resources. We will not be able to understand where and how resources need to be allocated as such. In case of space technology also, mathematics is totally indispensable. All the stellar achievements that we Indians, ISRO, rather we should say ISRO has done, all of that would never have been possible without the advancements of mathematics. In space technology particularly, the role of mathematics is exceptionally crucial. Calculus, for example, is used to determine the rate of speed required for spaceship to successfully reach space from Earth. Without having these kind of competencies, any space achievement, no space achievement is ever possible. So all that we have recently been extremely proud of, the base of all of that is somewhere in mathematics. Okay. Educational and skill development. Mathematics is able to provide individuals with analytical skills and problem solving abilities. You might be studying in any particular discipline, but if you are skilled in mathematics, then you are able to deal with the problems of that subject in a much more skilled and effective manner. You will be able to use your analytical ability in a much more effective way if you have way with numbers, if you are good with mathematics. Interdisciplinary connections. Mathematics connects with various other disciplines like computer science, economics, social science, so on and so forth, and therefore is truly an interdisciplinary subject as such. So having understood how mathematics is so relevant across different fields and consequently shares tremendous resemblance with music and hence is called as music of reason, we now try to give a way ahead on this topic. We can talk about maths and how it should be intellectually engaged for various different types of artistic pursuits also. Maths must be taken as a tool for collaboration and for various other purposes so that we can enhance our understanding across different endeavors and different subjects. Okay, that concludes our discussion, guys, with this topic. This last one was a little complicated, but then we tried our best to delineate the various dimensions of it and try to have a coherent kind of idea as to how we can write an essay on it. So that concludes our session for today. I hope you found value in the way we have discussed essays. We'll appreciate if you leave a like and comment for it. Thank you very much. I'll see you in my next class.